First call up of the new year here. It's 2025. Hope you had a wonderful new year. I'm Aram. He's Jack, and we figured a great way to kick off the new year is to talk about prospects for each of the 30 teams who could break camp. Important caveat here. We wanted to go with players that have not yet played in a big league game. So really breaking camp here. So for some teams, there's going to be some low hanging fruit like a Jordan Lawler. Can't go that way. Can't go with a Gilbert Diaz for the D-backs. We got to dig deep and try to find some other player, realistically, though, that can break camp. So it's going to be fun. I know you very much look forward to this episode every year, Jack,
Yeah.
because for certain teams, you're going to flex your AAA broadcaster muscles and pull out like a reliever that you saw that might be a little funky because the team doesn't have anybody else. But that's the fun part of
Right.
this exercise.
Yeah, I think you get the mix of the 26-year-old that's been blocked for a long time, and then a guy hit free agency, and it's like, okay, my time to shine now. Or you reach for a guy in Double A who may have some prospect intrigue that shows really well in spring training. And frankly, like we couldn't have this conversation 3 years ago because there was no incentive for a guy to make the team out of camp. You hold him down for his 3 years, you get that extra or 3 weeks, you get that extra year of service on that guy, and then it's all systems go. But now with the PPI involved, some of these prospects actually enter the conversation of break camp candidates as opposed to the 26-year-old reliever that
Yep.
fills a look that you need in that bullpen, and that's that. Like Jared Jones made the team out of camp last year. The year before that, it was Jordan Walker and Anthony Volpe. These are guys that, were top 100 prospects, maybe even top 50 prospects in baseball that performed and proved that they could audition for that I'm going to finish top two in rookie of the year voting type spot for their roster, which benefits the team now. So I like that this conversation has actually evolved over the years.
Yeah, which is awesome. And that was like, of course, it's not fully going to fix the manipulation issue, but it's
No.
absolutely taken a chunk out of it. Because as you said, there used to be really no reason for a team to be aggressive, even with their best prospects. If anything, they were more incentivized, the better the prospect, to withhold them from that big
Yeah.
league call up because the better the prospect, the more you are inclined to want that extra year of control. Now, the
Right.
better the prospect, the more likely you are to potentially get that draft pick compensation. So it forces their hand a little bit, and that's great for the game, and that's great for baseball in general. And I think it makes this conversation a little bit more interesting as well.
For sure. And like I'm thinking before the last collective bargaining agreement, there was zero incentive for the Guardians to entertain Chase DeLauder or the Cubs to entertain Owen Casey. But now you look at them and it's like, okay, if they hit the way they can, or I'm even thinking like a Tampa with Chandler Simpson. If it's a down rookie class in the American League and this guy steals 80 bags, he could get us a first round pick, and we
Yep.
know that Tampa covets first round picks.
Yeah. Not as much, I guess, as you'd imagine, though. Like, you'd think that they would push a little harder with these guys, but maybe that's an instance where Chandler Simpson's like, are you that hell bent on an extra year of control of a guy? And that's not a knock on Chandler Simpson. It's just
No.
that's a really good player, but like, it's not like Junior Caminero, who they actually seem to not be that concerned about the extra year
Right.
of control ultimately, where, you'll be able to potentially afford him unless he legitimately hits 380. But what is nice about him is the floor, as you mentioned, so high. If he swipes a ton of bags, he's going to accumulate WAR defensively. He's going to put the ball in play. He's going to walk. Yeah, in a weak rookie year, with the way that we've seen rookies get beat up by big league
Yep.
pitching, he could easily win one. So that is a guy that absolutely can make it. So we're going to go alphabetically here. Is that the plan?
So I actually had by division. I had NL East, NL
That
Central,
sounds
NL
good to me.
West, AL East, AL Central, AL West. So let's start with the National League East here. And I figure like this is going to be a bit more rapid fire than we typically go. And I feel like I always say that we go an hour 20, but I do feel like we're going to go pretty rapid fire because there are some teams where you can honestly just say nobody moving on. And that's that. But I do want to start with Philly, who won the National League East last year. Where do you go here? Like there were two names that jumped out to me. Obviously, Moises Chase or Chase with that Rule 5 pick out of Baltimore is the guy that is going to be there because he was a Rule 5 pick. Any of the two relievers jump out to you? Like
Well,
Abel as a reliever jumps out to me.
no, so Moises Chasse was acquired in that what trade was it with the O's? Was it the Sir Anthony Dominguez deal and
Oh,
and
maybe. And
Austin
then
Hayes? he was added to the 40 man to protect him from the Rule 5, which was a little bit of a surprise. And that was where I texted you because I was like, I told you this guy's nasty because
Yeah.
the numbers were not good in Baltimore and in the early going. And then he was having a great year in
Yeah.
the first, like a great few months, to be honest. And then the Phillies sniped him. I couldn't believe that the Orioles gave him up, to be honest. They did because I think they realized, hey, he was going to need to be added to the 40 soon.
Yeah.
I thought he looked so good stuff wise that it was a no-brainer for the
You
Phillies to
know,
add him to the 40.
you know where I messed that up? I confused Moises Chassé and Juan Nunez, who's in San
Juan
Diego. He's
Nunez.
the only guy. So Juan Nunez was the Baltimore guy that was selected in the Rule 5. Chassé was added to the 40. That's right.
But what's crazy is I still can't believe that the Orioles just threw him into that deal. The stuff, if you just look at the TrackMan data alone, was
Yeah.
wild. And then you saw the numbers really bumping up. The velo was up. It's like that is a guy that could absolutely be a candidate. I don't know how aggressively they'll push because he's a little bit, further behind development wise than some of the other guys. But I mean, swing and miss wise, like the stuff just looks great.
Yeah. Abel is the other one that jumps out to me. And like, you can look at McGarry too. McGarry doesn't throw enough strikes for me. If they ditch the starter thing and have him work in inning spurts in spring training and they like what they see, I mean, you're kind of running out of runway for Mick Abel in the minor leagues at this point. I could see him just making the team as another, high ceiling reliever.
That's one that, if it looks good enough in spring training, they have like a clear open spot in the bullpen, which I think still at this point you can look at that bullpen and say, hey, there's definitely room for some high ceiling arms in there.
Yeah.
And they might still address it. We'll have to wait and see. I think that could be absolutely an option. Where at this point with Abel, they may feel as though it's better for his development to work out of the bullpen at the big league level and just try to find the strike zone a little bit more. So there's also the other side of the coin where, Abel is going to be 23 years old and is still young and they're okay just sitting on that 40 man spot and just having that one spot go out to a guy that they're going to continue to try to develop in a second year at AAA. But I do think if there's a level of urgency for them with him now at this point, he absolutely could be a guy that they say, hey, just lean into the fastball, find the one breaking ball that you feel most confident with, just let it rip and let's get you out of the bullpen. With Painter, it sounds like he's actually not as slam dunk of a candidate because what it appears like, again, you never know, things could change, but especially now with the acquisition of Luzardo, it seems like with
Yeah.
Painter, we talked about it before too. I really think they're going to take that Paul Skeens script
Yeah.
and follow it pretty similarly, ease him into action, and then have him being available down the stretch. They might even be even more conservative than that Skeens script, but something along those lines where he's going to be eased in there. I don't think the Phillies are as worried about a comp pick here as they are making sure Andrew Painter is as healthy as humanly possible and as available as possible to help them down the stretch because you're inevitably going to have injuries to your rotation. Hopefully
Yeah.
that's not the case, but odds are you probably are. And you want by July for Andrew Painter to be that perfect option to just have to be able to step up and take on more responsibility.
Yeah. And Skeens was 160 innings this year. Painter
That's what I'm
can't
saying.
handle that.
No.
Like, there's no world that Painter gets to 160. I don't think there's a world that Painter gets to 100, to be honest with you. So I think we see him in inning spurts and then 2 inning spurts and then 3 inning spurts. And then he's up there heavily guarded as a starting pitcher. But I like the idea of tracking him for a July debut. Hey, after the All Star break, enjoy your vacation, come back. We've got maybe the best pitching prospect in baseball joining us
Yeah,
after the All Star break.
100%. So
So,
on the prospect front, then, like, who is your clear cut pick here? Of the like McGarry, I think the command he didn't even get taken in the Rule 5, so
no,
they have no reason to rush him. Chasse, I'm thinking it's Moises Chasse, right? It would
yeah,
be one of those very aggressive pushes, but if you look at this stuff,
yeah,
the carry on the fastball that he's getting now, that's up multiple ticks, and just the separation vertically. I mean, this guy in 19 and two thirds, double A innings,
hmm
35 strikeouts. He's filling up the zone at a decent clip now, like enough of a clip. It would be an aggressive push, but he's capable of going multi innings, being that swing man for them as well. I think it's very possible. And then I think the other name would be like a Gene Cabrera, but I think that doesn't make nearly as much sense with his struggles in double A, but he's just another 40
yeah.
man guy. I think Abel has the inside track, but what is their plan with him?
Right.
And do they want to just
And
throw?
and
If you throw him into the fire there and it gets worse, you could really jack him up even further after a bad
for
year.
sure. But
So
now counterpoint is he already jacked up?
yeah, I mean, yeah, how much worse can it get, I guess, than a 6.4 ERA? I think even just seeing some marginal success in opportunistic situations where, hey, it's a
Yeah.
blowout, let's throw you in there in the fifth inning and he gets some outs. Yeah, that might actually feel better for him than improving to a 4.55 ERA
Flailing
and
in Lehigh Valley. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I would say Abel's probably the best bet here. And I would actually support that guy walked 78 in 108 and two-thirds innings. I think
Yeah.
just because you put him in the bullpen this year when you have this super staff of veterans doesn't mean that the ship has sailed on Mick Abel for his entire career as a starter, right? Like
Right.
I think it might be a great way to ease him into a big league situation so he's not just rotting on the 40 in AAA.
For sure. Atlanta here. Abel is my choice for Philly as well. But Atlanta, I think Drake Baldwin is probably the clear cut answer. Like
Yeah.
it's either Drake Baldwin or Chadwick Trump that's going to be, the secondary catcher to Sean Murphy. And Murphy has clearly struggled to stay on the field. So I would like a 1A, 1B situation, and
Hmm.
Baldwin is ready for that. Um, and dude, like they run out of starting pitching fast in Atlanta right now. And Strider's going to be back, but Strider is not going to be ready for opening day. Obviously, Smith Shaver and Waldrip are available here, but I have my eyes on Drew Hackenberg as
Hmm.
well because Hackenberg was very good in the minor leagues and he was getting better, it seemed, level by level.
And that's a guy that I think that they could put in a unique role. Like I don't think it would just be like, hey, let's throw you in as a starter. He could be that long relief swing man, just be able to grab innings for them when they need it. They might just see him as a valuable piece in that regard, just another body up there. But they do have like Ian Anderson, and they do have some other guys that they may go to in that spot. I think
Yep.
Baldwin is the slam dunk because Sean Murphy, that oblique definitely affected him last year, and he's one of my favorite bounce back candidates for next year. But I also think it was telling that they were willing to let Darno go in the
Hmm.
respect that they like what Baldwin can bring to the table. And even further, I think it's because they feel as though Baldwin can get enough reps to justify like having him up at the big leagues early in the season.
Yep.
Murphy is 2 years removed from being one of the best catchers in the game. He's not 34 years old. I really think it was an injury issue, but even more of a reason for the Braves to look at Murphy and say, we can't have this happen again. We need to help preserve your health. And that's a guy that can DH other games. Like the bat, when he's healthy, is good.
Yeah.
But also Baldwin, if he comes into his own offensively, that's a guy that you could put in the DH spot some days too. But not, I guess that the problem is Ozuna. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a hurdle in that respect, I guess. But regardless, Baldwin's a guy that I think can eat into that playing time of Murphy a little bit, help preserve Murphy, and I think you have that double catching tandem there that would work out.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's making a comeback, but the two catcher thing is going to happen more and more now. And I do think that we're going to see it, sooner rather than later with Milwaukee, which we talked about last week. And there are a couple other teams. Like I think the White Sox are going to do that by the end of the year with Teal and Caro. Like the two catcher thing is going to happen at some point. And why can't Atlanta be that place where they already extended Murphy, but Murphy is now. You mentioned he's not 33, but he is on the other side of 30, is he not? Sean
What's
Murphy, yeah, he just turned 30.
okay?
So like
Yeah,
you've
age
got
29
6
season. I
years.
feel like you're not like unraveling physically. Like
No, no,
yeah,
no doubt. But like as a catcher, 30 probably means a little bit more than it does if you're a corner outfielder or things like that. So it would be nice to just start Baldwin's big league maturation and work through Murphy's extension with a catching tandem as opposed to he's the starter and we've got this prospect that isn't getting enough playing time.
I just wish, and he's such a good hitter. It's a little bit of a moot point, but I just wish Ozuna didn't clog that DH spot because then you can really rotate those two very easily. But Matt Olson at first base, he's going to play 162 as well.
Yeah.
Like it's a tough spot in that regard. So that's the only thing is they may be a little bit hesitant on cutting into Baldwin's reps, but I think a big reason why he's played all over world this year was
Yeah.
the focus on getting him ABs, right? He played full year in or most of the year in double triple A, but played a full
Yep.
minor league season. Then he goes to the Arizona Fall League. Then he plays in Premier 12. And I think the goal was let's get him playing as many games as possible because he
Right.
may only be playing 2-ish times a week, in the early going at the big leagues. But again, guys go down though. Ozuna could go down, like other things could happen, and you can shift around and move Murphy to the DH at that point and things like that. But Baldwin seems like the slam dunk, especially with Darno being gone.
Yeah. The Mets here, it's hard because, like the two names that jump to mind are, Ronnie Mauricio and Luis Angel Acuna, and those guys. It doesn't fit the exercise because Acuna played good ball for them down the stretch. I look at the pitchers and I don't see one. Like Hamill does not deserve it at this point because he threw to a six in AAA, and Blade Tidwell does not deserve it, and Sproat was really not good in AAA. Like, I think nobody. I wrote down nobody for the Mets.
Yeah, the Mets are a tough one. Like Sproat is a guy that the stuff could play there, but why would you just throw him into that fire at this point when
When
he's
he
struggling
hasn't
in triple?
had success in
Yeah.
Syracuse yet. If he finished the year with a 3 ERA in Syracuse and looked really good in spring training, okay, yeah, you know what? Like we need a strong five. This is our five on opening day. But he wasn't good at all in Syracuse.
Yeah, I like. Is there anyone even out of the bullpen that gives you some pause? Like, it's tough with
Not
the Mets
really.
situation. Yeah, I mean, Hamill had a 6.79
It
in
was really
AAA,
bad.
and they
Yeah.
lost Vassell, who was not much better. It's not the best situation from from a pitching perspective. I think there in terms of like pushing someone up. Obviously, they've addressed some needs and they've added some guys. I would have maybe said Eric Orsi, but he's gone too. They traded him in the trade for your guy Jose Siri.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't. I'm sure a Mets fan will pull some name out, some arm that could make the leap.
Sure.
Sure. There's not really anyone that stands out to me as well. I agree.
No. So sad situation for the Mets, but Washington, it's much better. You've got Evan Reifert, a Rule 5 pick who came from Tampa. Slider is crazy. Another reliever that jumps out to me is Marquise Grissom. Grissom is the son of Marquise Grissom, and that changeup, we talked about it when we did the Nats top prospects. Grissom was a name to watch. That changeup is like encroaching on 80 grade changeup. It's not the best changeup in the minor leagues, but it's pretty darn close to that. And it has this insane movement profile with a great difference in velocity from his fastball. I mean, if they see that changeup working in spring training, they could just say, hey, get up here and do the Tommy Kahnle thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, there. So Ryford obviously is that's a cheat code. Like
Right.
you can't say that because he's a Rule 5
Rule
pick. But
5.
yeah, I mean, and this is a team that you'd say maybe they don't always have a reason to because like what's the point of rushing a guy a little bit if you're in rebuild mode? But we just talked
Right.
about on the Just Baseball show like are they competing for the division? No, but this is a team that I think wants to take a step in the right direction this year and bolstering that bullpen as much as you can. It's absolutely something that would help you do that. And I think you're less worried about fast tracking relievers
Yep.
when you can put them again in these more opportunistic situations. The other thing with him too is he doesn't walk anybody.
Right.
Like so you mentioned the changeup, that's a pitch that's absolutely going to help him succeed right away. But then beyond that, he's not going to hurt himself, right? 13 walks in 53 innings. And when he got to double A, he walked six in 31 and a thirds innings. So that's a guy at the very least, if you're talking about middle reliever at this point as he develops, he's
Yep.
got a swing and miss pitch, and he's not going to walk guys. That's a guy who should be pretty comfortable throwing into the sixth inning and just
Yeah.
seeing how it goes.
No doubt. The sexier conversation is Brady House. Like, if House has a good spring, is
Mhm.
he a guy that could break camp? Because as it stands right now, Tana is their everyday option at third base. And I like Tana a lot. I don't like him as an everyday third baseman. I like him as a bounce around the infield. You can play short, you can play second, you can play third. But I would want Brady House to be playing third base. The other option is like, oh, do we do the Trey Lipscomb thing again? I don't think a contending Nats team has Trey Lipscomb playing third base 110 times this
No,
year. I think a contending Nats team has Brady House playing third base 110 times this year.
no doubt. And I think it just comes down to do they feel like Brady House can make that next the kind of the final step of maturation at the big league level, or do they think it needs to be had in AAA? And judging by the way that they handled James Wood, even a little bit, and just like a little more cautious there, like I could see them sending House back to AAA to start the year, where he had a 655 OPS in 54 games. Just put the ball on the ground too much, which was a little bit of the issue as well. Like swing and miss crept back in a bit, but this is also a guy that we know has huge power, can hold it down at third at a high level, or at least a pretty good level, and is part of that young core that they want playing together. You could just throw him into that fold and see how things go. So I think it would require a really strong spring to force their hand, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all. I think it definitely could be one of the few options there. I think you could also mention a Robert Hassel just because of how he looked in the Arizona Fall League, but it was so bad in AAA that
Yeah.
it's even more of an example of a guy that I'd probably just keep in AAA at this point and
Right.
let him kind of develop slowly. But it seems like Brady House would be the best bat option, and then yeah, Grissom on the mound.
Yeah, and I do feel like that conversation that we just had about House is pretty similar to the conversation that a lot of people had with Jordan Walker going into the 2023 season in spring training there. It's like, okay, like he's not far off, but there's a final step of maturation that needs to happen, and Walker forced the Cardinals' hand. He didn't have the inside track when he showed up to spring in 2023. Volpe probably did, and Volpe just confirmed everything that the Yankees wanted to see from him in that spring training. But Walker was like, man, this guy's surprisingly awesome.
Yep.
Like maybe he can fit on this roster. And that's, I feel like, the conversation that is to be had with a Brady House.
No doubt, no doubt, and yeah, he has the makings to be able to just go nuclear in spring training, and again, the glove being what it is helps his case a lot too, where he's going to
Yeah.
hold it down at third. One other name is Brad Lord. I think it would
Yeah.
require like somebody going down in spring training or something like that. But if
Yeah.
if you were looking at an arm to throw into the fold there, where like okay, you don't have time to go sign somebody, you have a spot in the rotation that needs to be filled or some innings that you need to find, like.
Yeah.
Brad Ward's a guy that I think you can bring up and is not going to just as you'll say like throw up all over himself. Like
Right.
he's going to hold his own I think in that spot and look it may be a high force if you rush him up there, but he's going to get out to a degree and get soft contact and survive. And I think he can be better than that. I think he has a chance to be a decent five starter. He had a great year last year. It was
Yeah.
video game numbers in double A, but a 3.93 in triple A, again, when a lot of offensive, numbers were popping there and a lot of guys struggled in that league at points, like he put together some good numbers and looks like a guy that could eat innings. If I think again, I think it would be circumstantial there for them to push him up.
Right. I looked at Lord and then I buffered because I didn't see any value there if he wasn't in the starting rotation. So you need an injury or you
Yeah.
need something to happen for him to get there. Just because like, okay, you have him on the roster as a long man. I don't think that's benefiting anybody. I think he can
No.
throw 160 innings in
That's
triple
an
A.
innings eater, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I think after they brought back Trevor Williams, which I love that signing for them, like
Yeah.
just adds
Great.
another solid arm for them that can eat innings. It would be a little bit of a stretch, but man, things happen.
Yep. And then last team in the NL East is Miami. It feels like they have a spot in that lineup. And it feels like it's going to come down to Davison or Augustine Ramirez. Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah, so the acquisition of Matt Mervis makes it interesting too, right?
Yeah.
Where, I think and I like it for the Marlins for multiple fronts. Like you traded Vidal Brujan who cleared waivers for a guy that was putting up, monster numbers and in the upper minors and, dealt with a hamate last year and just had not gotten consistent opportunity at the big league level. You get a chance to buy low there, see what he can do. Those are the kind of moves the Marlins should be making. But I also think a big reason why they made that move was we were talking about it with Davis and De Los Santos. Like, of course, he has the potential to be a special power hitter, and what he did last year at 20, 21 years old is remarkable. But also, every indicator points towards that not translating at the big league level until he makes some tangible changes, and that being the chase, some of the swing and miss, the ground ball rate. Like he needs to clean some things up in the offensive profile. It's crazy to say that when a guy hit 40 home runs, but
Right.
you really saw that chase creep up over 50%. And I think the Marlins acquisition of Mervis, I think was also just a little bit of a time buyer for Davison as well, because maybe Davison lights it up, and now you have a platoon situation there, and you can do some different things. But I thought to me that kind of signified, and it should, because I think if Davison broke camp, I think you're putting him in a position where it's going to be really hard for him to succeed.
Right.
Could you imagine you're a big league catcher and you're preparing for the game, and you see a kid who hit 40 home runs in AAA, who has a 50+% chase rate over the final 30 games. I'm like licking my chops. All right, here we go. Don't throw a
Yeah.
single thing in the strike zone. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to set him down. And
Yeah.
that's just the difference. So that's not saying he's doomed forever in that regard, but why would you want to put him in that situation? I think Augustine, though, too, the Marlins take Liam Hicks in the Rule 5. They still have
Yeah.
Fortes.
Time
I think
buyer.
if Hicks doesn't look good, I almost see it a little bit of as like an Augustine Ramirez versus Liam Hicks battle as
Uh-huh.
well. I don't think
Yeah.
the Marlins are married to Hicks. They were, but almost traded him to the Rays apparently, right after they selected him. But I think it's again another good insurance policy in case Augustine doesn't show up in spring training looking better defensively, and maybe he looks a little shaky offensively. I don't think that'll be the case. The bat looks more than fine. But I think you have insurance policies for both now, and I think for them it's almost competing against themselves because they have the inside track as the highly regarded prospects that the Marlins gave up legitimate pieces to get.
Yeah.
But I think for both of them, it's just they got to show well, and if they do, the Marlins will make room for them.
For sure. And like, I don't blame them for not being married one bit to a Rule 5 pick in Liam Hicks, who is not an elite catcher by any
No,
stretch of it. He might, be that catcher first base type. And then you've got Fortes, and Nick Fortes, unfortunately, I know he's been on the roster for a bit. Like, he hasn't really proven that he's got ample staying power on the roster. So whenever Augustine is ready, he'll be on that team. And the question is that on March 27th or 28th, whatever it is, or is it a month from then? The other interesting one is I think you can have a Derek Hill versus Victor Mesa Jr. conversation on this
yeah.
roster on opening day. So Mesa Jr. is the other name that jumps out to me.
His numbers took a big hit after he tried playing through a back issue over the
Yep.
final month and a half of the season. So that AAA OPS dropped from like around 800. He finished at like 750. It's a guy that plays a good center field, and the Marlins need that, right? If Dane Myers is struggling, they don't really have a lot of guys that can play center field.
And
It's Derek Hill.
Stowers is going to play it at a slightly below average level. He's more of a corner outfielder that masquerades in center.
Yep. And I think if Stowers is looking rough in spring training in the way that he looked at the end of the year, and Mesa looks good while providing more value with the glove, the
Yeah.
Marlins could go that route. So I think Mesa Jr. is an option. There's not as much reason to rush him, but there
Right.
also is not a ton of reason to stash him in the minor leagues that much longer either, given that he played almost a full season in AAA and I thought showed some pretty good things. So it's an interesting situation there as well. But if you had to pick one, who would you pick? 'Cause I think it's between Augustine and Davison. I think they're almost in the same boat to a degree.
Yeah. I think Mesa is my one pick, and it's like,
Really?
okay, one guy to make it. I just because I feel like there's more of a clear path to make the roster. And they showed their hand transactionally this offseason that they are buying time with Mervis, with Liam Hicks. And I think Mervis is going to stay on that roster for 162. Like I think if he plays more than 10 games at a time in the big leagues, he can start to get comfortable and show you that he's actually a very good hitter and can be a good hitter at the major league level. He and Canario, I felt so bad for because you
Yeah.
get up, you get 10 at bats over the course of 3 weeks, and then it's like, all right,
So,
man,
oh, why
back
didn't
to
you play well? Oh,
right. It's like, oh,
gee,
because I
I
hit
knew.
once every 4 days.
Yeah, I guess it's so tough. It's so
So
tough. I, I
just
I I think that's a good pick because the outfield is wide open. And especially if they end up, making another move, or also there's so much unpredictable, you know, components to the outfield situation, right? Like if certain guys aren't looking good in spring training, it's going to be a very open competition between a Stowers and a Conine, and a Dane Myers and a Derek Hill, and like nobody has really an inside track in that situation at all, right? Like you could have said Stowers did in the beginning, and then I think what Griffin Conine did to really perform down the stretch there, and Stowers struggles. I think you can say it's wide open going into camp. Mesa getting hurt, he would have maybe had that inside track, but he got hurt at the end of the year, so he's got to kind of show that that back is right and ready to go. And then Dane Myers, he probably had the best opportunity there, and unfortunately hurt himself, and
Yeah.
didn't get to play in the final couple months of the season. So spring, I don't know if there's a more wide open spring training situation than the Marlins outfield, and it's going to be interesting.
And the other wrinkle, like the one guy that factors in, and I feel like everybody's just sharpieing into the big league outfield, is Jesus Sanchez. And if they get an offer for Jesus Sanchez and they can take some of that money off their payroll, they're doing that in the snap of a finger.
If a team approaches and I get it, I get the Marlins perspective. Like he had a good second half. Each year has taken like a quarter of a step in the right direction.
Right.
But if and you don't want to just trade those EVs because if it clicks, like well, and why not for one more year?
If
Hold
it
on.
clicks, we're on year 5 of if
Yeah,
it clicks.
I agree. I'm not holding my breath anymore, but I could understand like being a GM and just being like, you know what, whatever. Let's see it one more year.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to click, but that's a guy that if a team has an outfielder go down and they offer you, a top 15 prospect and a top 30 prospect for him,
And they eat all the money because
see
he's
ya.
getting a little expensive in arbitration.
Yeah, see ya, gone. So, and that even more opens it up. I agree. I'm going to go with Augustine here though because of the positional versatility where.
Yeah.
I don't think the Marlins. I think there's a chance the Marlins move Liam Hicks like in spring training when another team needs a catcher potentially.
Yeah.
And I think with Augustine working so hard defensively, you have Fortes as a starter, but then now you also have a perfect scenario where if Davison's up, I don't want him platooning. I want to see that guy playing consistently and seeing how he does. That's a guy that needs consistent ABs, but you got to give Mervis run too. So I think the idea of Augustine Ramirez splitting time between first base with Mervis, you have Augustine facing the lefties when and playing first base, and then also catching, and taking on a lot of those responsibilities with Fortes. You can get him into pretty regular at bats.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to go to the National League Central in a moment. Before that, quick break. First episode of 2025. We're calling our first Audible of 2025. We obviously want to spend a lot of time on this. So we're going to do the National League and then we're going to do the American League next week. So that's what we got going. But National League Central now. Let's start with Milwaukee. Clear cut, man. Like there are 3 that I feel like are slam dunks to make this team and their debut could come on opening day. Durbin offensively.
Yep.
Yoho in the bullpen. I think Mizorowski in the bullpen.
I think Jesus Mate is ready.
Sure. Yeah, for Carolina.
um, no, I think in order, it's got to be Durbin just because it's just such an easy role, right? Like you're not just throwing. Like, he'll be a bench player and part time, and there's a very obvious spot for them. Then I think it's Mizorowski. Then I think it's Yoho.
You think I would actually put Yoho ahead of Mizorowski because they may pause just a little bit longer to try it as a starter for another month.
That's the only way that it would be um
Yoho
Yoho.
over Mizorowski.
Because my thing with Yoho is I think, and it'll depend on spring training. He'll have to show this. Like he threw 14 innings in AAA. Like this guy that started the year in high A, and each level he climbed to, I think the command started to wane a little bit more and a little bit more. And I don't think it was a matter of him locating. I think it was more a matter of hitters having a more sound approach, like because you have to have a very sound approach against Craig Yoho or you're done. Like high A hitters had no chance. That's why they struck out 37 times in 20 and a thirds innings. But double A hitters barely stood a chance. That's why they struck out 46 times in 23 innings, but they picked up a few more hits. And then high A hitters, or excuse me, triple A hitters, they struggled too, but they were able to draw some walks here and there and force him to locate. And that's what's going to happen in the big leagues when you have 40 inches of horizontal separation, right? Like I'm going to make you locate. So if he's battling some command challenges, I could see them waiting a little bit, but also I could see them just wanting to add a new airbender to the bullpen as well. So it really depends, I agree, on what their plan is with Mizorowski, which I think the plan should be so clear at this point.
Closer.
Similar to the Mick Abel conversation, but different because we've seen Mizorowski dominate as a reliever in AAA. Doesn't mean that he's never going to be a starter. But this is a guy that can help you tomorrow at the big league level, is clearly a better pitcher as a reliever at this stage, and has already thrown in AAA. Like, let's just get that guy up there. Um, I will have to just wait and see what their plan is.
Yeah, but I'm with you. Durbin is like clear cut. He's already made the team.
Mhm.
You can do the handshake in the manager's office.
Yeah.
Congrats, brother. You're going to the big leagues, like that kind of thing. But those two relievers. The other name that jumped out to me was a guy that we talked about last week, KC Hunt. If that slider they deem worthy of being in the bullpen, and they look at a guy that was older for each level that he pitched at, was their minor league pitcher of the year, like this is their opportunity to just shove him up there because like
Yeah.
he was climbing like crazy anyways last year.
Yeah, and I like Chad Patrick as a long man potentially too.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
forgot he hasn't debuted yet. 26 years old and like legit.
he had a 2.9 in 136 and a thirds innings in AAA
Yeah.
last year, 145 punch outs, 39 walks. Um, yeah, like this guy can pitch, man. And so I mean, is he going to miss enough bats at the highest level to be a consistent five starter? We'll have to wait and see. But at the very least, I think that's a guy that, I mean, they took Connor Thomas in the Rule 5. If
Yeah.
Connor Thomas is not looking good as their long man in spring training and 88 is getting knocked around the yard, Chad Patrick can easily be that long man for them and a really good one and could
For sure.
end up being a spot starter and it gives them great depth.
For sure. St. Louis, I think that they're going to move one of these starters. Apparently, there's some trade interest for Mats, and at that money, I can't fathom what team would want Steven Matz at 11 million a year. But like Godspeed, Fetty is also drawing some serious interest. I think Fetty is easily movable, and they can get a decent haul for Fetty at 1 year 7.5 with
Mhm.
what he did last year. That creates a spot for Quinn Matthews, and it's time for Quinn Matthews to be in the big leagues. He started last year in low A. He's there. He's ready.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can, people may say, oh, well, he had a 6.48 ERA and 16 and two-thirds innings in AAA.
Don't
Uh,
care.
he threw so many innings. Right? He was already at 130 innings before he got to AAA. I think he just ran out of gas a little bit, and he was still missing bats there too. Just started
Yeah.
walking guys, which is that's not what he does, right? Like he walked 11 batters in low A and 30 and two-thirds innings. He walked nine batters in double A and 43 and two-thirds innings. He walked 15 batters in sorry, did I say high A there? So
Yeah, high A.
low A was 11 walks and 30 and two-thirds. High A was nine walks and 43 and two-thirds. Double A was 15 walks and 52 and a third, and triple A was 14 walks and 16 and two-thirds innings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not the level getting to him. He has four pitches that can get outs at the big league level. He has multiple that I think flash plus. The fastball characteristics are good, and he was throwing hard. Like he could go up to the big leagues now and hold his own. And I'm sure it'll take a year until he develops into that number three starter or even better than that he can be. But that's a
Yeah.
guy that like why waste any more bullets? He's 24. Get him up in the big leagues, and he's a guy that can help you tomorrow.
No point. No point in wasting bullets with him. There were some other guys that like, oh, could you if you had a spot in the rotation, but like Tink is nowhere close. Like TK Roby hasn't debuted yet, but I don't think Roby is there. Roby has so much more left to prove in AAA, I think. And then they are kind of the king of giving everybody a one start sample. Like McGreevy made 2, 3 starts. Grisefo had a couple of appearances in the big leagues.
You know they're going to take their sweet time with Tank Hens too, as good as
Yeah.
he was in Double A. Sam Roberts, they're going to do the same thing, take their time with him as well.
Yeah.
I think Quinn Matthews is the clear option. If they trade some guys from the infield situation, Cesar
Yes.
Prieto,
Yeah. That was the other name I had written down because he does not strike out.
no, and I mean that's just a guy you can plug in, and with the versatility as well, like it's going to be fine.
It'll be kind of nice, like when you get sick of Gorman after 5 games. It's like, dude, you've K'd 12 times in the last 5 games. Time for Prieto, just like as a taste breaker for a minute. And
100%.
Gorman, I saw Katie Wu from the Athletics say that John Mozeliak wants 500 to 600 plate appearances for Gorman this year. Okay,
Yeah, I
have
hope he commits to it too, though,
have
and doesn't just
fun.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a lot of K's though.
yeah,
It's gonna be a lot of Ks.
yeah,
We'll see, but yeah, I think the obvious answer's got to be Quinn Matthews here, and hopefully they do it.
yeah. The Cubs. Obvious answer is Matt Shaw.
Yeah,
Gage Workman, obviously Rule 5 pick, but Shaw should be their opening day third baseman. Um, you think Casey makes the team?
like he should, right? Like he absolutely should. But are you going to put him in a situation where he's not playing every day? And I think if you do that, that's not ideal. You still want him to develop a little bit more bat to ball wise. Yeah, I think he's big league ready, but I'd still like instead of just stashing him like they've done with Canario, like he cannot be doing the Canario Mervis thing.
No.
He's too valuable. So I, I almost want to say no because unless they move Seiya.
Yeah.
Because if they move Seiya, then I think so. But I don't know if they're going to move him now, right? It doesn't seem like it. So I think no after the Kyle Tucker edition.
That sucks.
It does.
Like, I feel bad for Casey because he was so good over a full year and didn't get a AAA sample in 2023. I don't think.
No.
He was so good in a very pitcher-friendly Southern League in
And he said it was the
2023.
hardest. He told us on the show this was the hardest challenge of his professional career, and he responded really well to it. And I think improved in a lot of regards too, defensively, I think on the base paths.
Yep.
But I get it. Like they got a little bit more time with him, given how young he is, and I think he'll get up there quickly. I think if someone goes down, he's definitely first guy
The guy.
to jump in there. But I can also understand from the Cubs' perspective, like Seiya Suzuki was a monster last year offensively when
Yeah.
healthy, and like
He's very good.
it's proven there. Like you don't want to just move him and roll the dice, and like there's not really any other clear spot for him to get consistent at bat. So it's Matt Shaw, and the trade made it even more of a guarantee that it's Matt Shaw.
Yeah. Is there anybody else? Like I'm thinking like a Frankie Scalzo Jr., but no.
Uh yeah, Scalzo's numbers were fun, but I
They were
don't.
fun for a half season, and then he finished the year with what, like a high twos, low threes.
Yeah, the 40's too tight right now for them, and then all the other arms have already debuted, right? That are on the
Yeah.
40. Killian, Wicks, Ben Brown. So no, I don't really think, and I'm looking at like relievers. They're not going to rush
Arias.
Michael. They're not going to
Yeah.
rush Arias into that situation. I don't think Jack Neely already debuted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it.
Just Shaw
Just Shaw
and Gage Workman.
and Gage Workman, the Rule 5 pick.
Yeah, there you go. Cincinnati, Cooper Bowman, the Rule 5 pick, is going to be there. I think Zach Maxwell should be on the team.
Yeah,
He was imposing, dude. Like, wow. And Maxwell's a guy that, yeah, like the Reds could always use more bullpen arms. I think 101 being added to that bullpen, going from Hunter Green to Zach Maxwell to Alexis Diaz would be fun. Very
yeah,
fun.
it's got to be Maxwell. I think and I'm not saying they have to throw him in there because maybe they have some concerns about the command and understandably so. But that fastball is outrageous. It's not just the velocity; it's the characteristics.
Yeah.
And then if he can find any semblance of consistency with his breaking ball, he could be a high leverage arm and a disgusting one at that. The thing is, like even in AAA, he was pretty good in terms of missing bats, and it was just about the consistency. But I don't think it was egregious enough to say, oh, we need a more time in AAA. I think that's a guy that you can bring up to the big leagues and again ease him into leverage, but especially with them trading some of their stuffy arms that at least one of the stuffy arms that
Yeah.
for Jose Trevino that gives you the roller coaster ride, but okay, you shed some volatility there. Let's add some because volatility generally, I think, is always inferred as negative, but there's also the positive side of it where it's like he could be absolutely disgusting and miss a ridiculous amount of bats. So, um, you know, I think he can absolutely be their Fernando Cruz and just be a guy, a version of that is less frustrating if things go well. So now that they shed Fernando Cruz, I think you can tolerate a Zach Maxwell a little bit more now with the volatility.
I like that. It's all about risk reward, and this is a risk, but it's a high
Mhm.
risk, high reward arm, and there aren't many of those. Like bringing back Brent Suter, you take care of your floor there.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun with the ceiling.
Yep. Yeah. Everyone else debuted already, right? Like Chase Petty, I just probably not going to with only 10 AAA innings in the way that they want to kind of manage his innings, generally speaking. But if somebody went down or whatever and he shows well, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the entire world. But bat wise, don't really, most of their bats are lower level guys. And Edwin Arroyo, off of injury, didn't look good in the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah.
He's still far off. Aguilar already debuted. It's Maxwell, I think, is the best option.
Could Luis May make it? He hasn't thrown in AAA yet. He had a good fall league, obviously, and then he goes to Lidom. 5 innings, he walked nine.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think so. Even when in the fall league, like he was spraying it a little bit.
Yeah. So that's what you got, Zach Maxwell. And then Pittsburgh. Bubba could be Jared Jones. Jared Jones had no inside track to make that roster last year. And then he rolls out in spring training and is taking names in Bradenton.
Yeah,
And if Bubba does that, I
which
mean, you could.
he might.
He might. And like they got burned on the Skeens thing by missing the PPI window, and Skeens got the full year because Paul Skeens won Rookie of the Year. This is a wide open National League Rookie of the Year race, and Bubba could absolutely do that if he's given, a full 30 start sample. He threw over 100 innings last year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah,
I know he missed 3 weeks, but he should have been over 100 innings.
he threw 120.
This is your shot at the
Yeah,
PPI pick.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, my initial thought was like, okay, well, the rotation, is there a spot for him? Like, yeah, there kind of is. I mean, I still think that this team, you floated it on the JB show, like Johan Oviedo and some prospects in the right situation can get you a bat or a piece. But
I
even
even think
so,
Bailey Falter can get you a bat or a piece.
and if Bubba Chandler is doing pretty much, if you like Jared Jones, you'll love Bubba Chandler. If he's doing the same things, like is the fastball quite as outrageous? I would say it's maybe like a half tick below that, right? Where it's
Yeah.
characteristics wise and velo wise, just slightly, but it's still outrageous. Like if he's overwhelming big league hitters with the fastball and then flashing the secondaries that we know he has, like how do you say go to AAA again? Like it would be really hard to do that. And we've spoken to him on the call up. I know you have plenty. You've had plenty of conversations with him to this point where that's a guy whose attitude and the way he carries himself, I think, will only help his case when saying, "Hey, let's throw this guy into the fold here." Like he's got a killer's mentality out there, and I mean, you're watching him just attack big league hitters. I think the Pirates will say, "Oh, we want another killer in this rotation." Skeens, Jones, and Bubba Chandler. It's not just what they do on the mound. Like it's a killer
It's how they
mentality where you got to see those three guys in a series. Like if you're in a slump, that slump ain't ending in that series.
No, and all three of them pitch pissed to
Uh-huh.
different degrees. I think
Uh-huh.
Jared Jones is the more clear cut, like I pitch pissed. Skeens is like I'm better than you. I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. He plays with his food a little bit versus Jones, who just goes for the jugular right away. I think Bubba's this good hybrid of both, where
Yep.
like you can see that supreme confidence. I'm the best player on the field right now. There is nothing that you can do to beat me. And you saw it in AAA. I think it was his last home start when he went five perfect or five no hit, and then that got broken up into six. Like those first 5 innings were what you saw from Skeens at the big league
Yeah.
level. It was just, I'm so much better than you. I'm going to kill you with my fastball, and I've got a decent feel for my slider and change today, and it's going to work, and I'm going to murder you.
Yep. And what about this though? What if Bubba doesn't have the best showing
Yeah.
and Thomas Harrington has a really good showing?
So Harrington is a guy that I think makes sense to have in AAA for another month or two because I don't think that he makes up that time to be, top two rookie of the year guy because his stuff just isn't like the K's are not going to be there. And obviously we glorify K's now. And, he can eat innings and all that. But if they can effectively squeak out 7 years of Thomas Harrington,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
that's a
good
good
point.
decision. And it sucks. Like it's brutal, but he
It's
does feel like the kind of guy that you would love to have on your team for 6.5 years.
it's a great point because if Bubba Chandler's showing well, he is comfortably better than what you're going to get from Bailey Falter and Johan Oviedo. I
Yeah.
think Thomas Harrington will be a better pitcher than those guys, but Thomas Harrington, like, is Thomas Harrington going to be that much better than Bailey Falter at a 4.43 last year in 142 innings? Like,
For the first 2 months of the season, no, I don't
Probably
think so.
not. Yeah, like maybe he is, and maybe he's a high threes, but is that worth burning an extra year of control if you're a cost concerned Pirates? Probably not. So that does make sense. I agree, but it just illustrates though where they're at pitching wise, because if someone went down the first week and I had to go to Thomas Harrington, I'm not worried about it. I do
No,
think
in
he's
the
going to hold it
slightest.
down without a problem. And another guy that cerebral like wise on the mound, he knows how to make his stuff work and is always pursuing. I think the another guy we've had
Yeah.
always pursuing the best shapes and things like that I think help him squeak out the most out of his stuff. And
Yeah.
and that's why I think I have a lot of confidence in him having a successful big league career.
The other one, I think Burrows is going to make the team as a reliever because you saw Burrows for I think, one appearance in the big leagues last year. Braxton Ashcraft, like we'll see how they use him in spring training because he looked really good as a starter, and that's a top 100 prospect in baseball. And he just couldn't stay healthy, and that's been a problem over the last couple of years. So if he's flashing 97, 98, and it's got great characteristics on the heater, and he's dropping that pair of disgusting breaking balls, inning spurts, man, let it eat, Carmen Majinsky style.
I agree. I think that's a great point because this bullpen, it has potential, but I think you need more irons in the fire.
Yeah,
And you need to preserve that guy's health at this point. I think the ship may have close to have sailed, at least for now, on the starting
yeah,
side, until he can rebuild his health and just get used to handling a workload consistently. You throw
right,
him in the bullpen with Majinski, Kyle Nicholas, who could take a big step forward. You hope Bednar can't be worse. And
right.
that has a lot of potential there, and I think helps shorten these games too, because you're not going to always want to push Jared Jones 7 innings. You're not going to always want to push Bubba Chandler 7 innings, so it can help shorten those starts as well. I would love that idea as well, and again, I don't know why the Pirates are not spending on a bat when you have this pitching situation that you have. Like it is such a no-brainer to roll the dice on a bat, but here we are.
Okay, National League West. Let's start with the Dodgers. I think I might have found Alex Vesia. You heard of Jack Dreyer?
No,
Okay,
no.
I think I might have found Vesia. Uh, Jack Dreyer, kid from Iowa, 19 inches of vert on the fastball. I clicked on a bunch of fastballs in the portal. 18 inches, 19 inches. I saw 20 inches. It's the lean back and fire. Like, dude, the numbers are good in the upper levels in the minor leagues. That fastball from that release and the characteristics on it, wow, man. And I don't know if they need another Vestia here, but 25-year-old from, I think, Salt Lake City, come on down. Welcome to the Dodger bullpen.
I mean, that's probably the only area where someone's gonna crack the roster here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how else are you gonna crack this Dodgers roster? I think it would have to be an injury in the infield, and you have Alex Freeland jump in to
Yeah.
the equation, right? Which is not impossible at all. I think Freeland showed enough to where, if Rojas goes down or something like that, like you bring him up and you have him on the bench just ready to go. But from a pitching perspective, I think that's got to be the one area where it makes the most sense for them to throw a guy up there because again they're just so deep and Dryer's already on the 40.
Yeah.
So that was the only other thing. Like if there's a team that's gonna have a 40 crunch, it's the Dodgers, so they're not gonna rush a prospect.
Yeah.
Dryer's you got it. Dryer's the answer.
I mean, and I don't know what kind of pitch data you can get on him, but I just found all I saw was four seamers really good. He's a four seam slider guy. It's whatever, but the four seamer is 19 inches of vert and all that jazz. But Jack Dreyer, I think it was Tommy John surgery that wiped out his entire 2021 after being drafted as a starter. Was he even drafted? No, non-drafted free agent in 2020. Comes back in 2022 with the complex, looks fine. High A was pretty good, 2.3 ERA in 2023. This year, opened the year in Double A Tulsa. 14 and two thirds, one unearned run. He K'd 20, walked three, then got to Triple A. 42 and two thirds, 52 Ks, nine walks at a 2.95 ERA. So in the minor leagues, 124 innings at a 2.18 ERA, K'ing 12 per nine. And I think it's the last 2 years, or this year, yeah. After Great Lakes, he walked 38 and 54 innings. He walked 1.9 hitters per 9 innings this year. So he has command for the strike zone. He's got a fastball that plays, and he's going to be 26 on opening day.
Yeah, this and with three options, obviously too. Like if
Yeah,
it's not working, they'll just option him right back down. Yeah, this seems like an absolute no-brainer. Um, and already being on the 40. What's interesting is he seems to be a guy that gets a lot of like weak contact and stuff too. So that helps as well. It's not just like fully whiff reliant, but above average chase gets weak contact, makes it work. Like this is another one of those just random dudes that they
yeah,
just spawned out. Average EV against last year was 87 miles per hour. Soft enough. Like he's gonna
yeah,
make this thing work, and everything's hit straight up into the air. So,
really.
yeah, it is kind of that Vesia archetype that I think absolutely can work. And if you look at like the underlying stuff too, he wasn't even very lucky, which is great. Like when you have numbers like that and you weren't lucky, like his left on base percentage was quite low. Like this is a guy that should be fun to watch this year. So there you go, good find.
There we
The
go.
strikeout to walk rate stuff is nuts.
Yeah. The only other name that came to mind was the name that you mentioned, Freeland, but that's injury related, or like they just get pissed with Chris Taylor and they say, okay, thank you. Like
Yeah, like
appreciate what you've done.
we can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But I just don't see that happening. He seems to be too important to the ball club itself, I guess. Like
Right.
I just don't see them moving off of him. I think they would have done it by now, right? Maybe at some point during the season when they really need the roster spot, but just don't see it happening.
Yep. San Diego, they took Juan Nunez in the Rule 5, so he's going to be there. Tirso, we've talked about Tirso Ornelas a lot on the Just Baseball show because he's like the smear on the roster resource when you open it. It's like, oh, how can Tirso Ornelas be in line for an opening day right field job? He was really good in AAA last year. He's still decently young guy that had an 850 in the PCL last year.
Yeah. No, I think he's one of the few, like, because we're looking at that team right now, right? And it's like they've got a lot that they need to sort out and depth that they need to add. They reportedly, I think this, I wish I had the exact publication off the top of my head, but I believe it was a South Korean publication that listed out the teams that have an offer out reportedly to Hyesung Kim. And
Yeah,
the Padres were one of them because we talked about on the show, like Hyesung Kim relatively high floor. Like I think he's going to play great defense and steal bags at second base, but I think he's going to be a below average hitter, especially for the first
yep,
couple seasons. Um, and that I think teams feel the same way. So team sounds like offers are going to be below 10 million. So I think Padres looking at that as an opportunity to just address their lineup situation, even if he's a 90 WRC plus, but it's great defense and speed. You take that. Like they just need to not have a gaping hole or a drastic drop off in the back half of the lineup.
right.
And I think Tirso Ornelas will not be a drastic drop off. And I think adding a guy like that would help a lot too. But Tirso, like, I think fans were kind of hoping to see him maybe even at points last year. It's a no brainer for him to get up there this year and break camp. Like, I don't think that with their financial constraints, I would address other situations before I displace Tirso Ornelas. Like, obviously, you're trying to win a World Series. You'd love to be able to add better pieces in every spot. But with multiple spots where they need to add pieces, like they don't even have really a DH slated at this point, I'm addressing those areas before I'm worried about an upgrade over Tirso Ornelas. That's the furthest from their problems. He hits the ball hard. His approach is fine. Defense is fine. Like he can hold it down for them and be, above a replacement level player at the very least.
Yeah. Was there anybody else that jumped to the forefront of your mind? Like for me, no. I was like, okay, is Brandon Valenzuela better than Brett Sullivan? And the answer is probably not. It's a very hard farm system to look at, if we're being honest. Is it bottom five in baseball? DeVries and Salas lifted above bottom
Yeah,
five, but I think it's
DeVries
bottom
and
four.
Salas and yeah, it was probably just enough to keep it up. But it is the single most top heavy in baseball. I
It's
can promise you
crazy.
that.
Like once you get past DeVries and Salas, it's really bad.
You get Cash Mayfield, and then it's I don't know. Um, with how aggressive they can be with the bullpen and some things at times, like Francis Pena is pretty nasty. Got a chance to see him a little bit. Like stuff is wild. So like and he doesn't walk a ton of guys. So Francis Pena is a guy that I could see getting fast track to the bullpen if they needed an arm there.
Yeah.
But other than that, like Omar Cruz is another arm that I could see kind of fast track to the bullpen if needed. Those are the only two other guys that really stand out to me.
Did Bergert get up?
No, he didn't, but he's only thrown in double A, and I think he had like a 4.8.
Yeah, I'd
So
rather go to a Jackson Wolf who's back in the fold than a Bergert.
I'd rather go to like Johnny Brito or
Brady,
they've got other
absolutely.
guys as well too. Sean Reynolds already debuted, so I think Francis Pena is probably my pick just because I think he's disgusting.
Oh,
And could thrive in a role for them.
yep. San Francisco or Arizona, sorry. Arizona, I wrote nobody question mark. Like, do you see a single soul in the Diamondback situation that could break camp? I don't.
It's gonna be what's his name? Hold on, hold on. I got this.
This is
Well,
good. We're not cutting it.
no, we're not gonna cut it. We're not gonna cut it. Well, before I get there, while we're already debuted,
Yes.
Tommy Troy needs to
No.
rebuild his value in double A this coming season and settle in there. A lot of their other guys already debuted. It's a weird spot when you look at the team. It's either guys that have debuted or guys that are further off, or just guys that are not going to displace anybody on the current roster. Tim Tawa was the answer. Tim
Okay.
Tawa was added to the 40. They're gonna he's gonna break camp. He put up big numbers. He's versatile, can run a little bit. Tim Tawa is the answer.
Okay.
Honestly, though, pull up the Tim
I'm
Tawa
pulling it up.
numbers. Got to give him a
I'm
little bit
pulling it
more
up.
praise here than I think
He'll
we did. I don't even think we mentioned him in the
no.
Diamondbacks episode.
11th round pick out of Stanford in 2021. He's going to be 26 on April 7th.
Here's the irony:
Played.
my shirt. He was a
Was he a
Newport
goal?
goal when I was there.
Yeah, he was a 1026 OPS with the
Oh,
goals.
dude, he was nasty with the goals. I'll give him that.
Bro, it's 336 with 7 pumps in 31 games.
He was
4 year.
good. Him and Cody Hosey were nasty for the
Oh
Newport
yeah,
goals.
yeah. Tulane, roll green wave. 4 years at Stanford. This year, 142 games, 105 of which with Amarillo, an 868 OPS. He had 31 homers. 31 homers between Amarillo and Reno.
Yeah, I mean those are the two most hitter-friendly environments, no doubt about it. But he
But
can run, elevates the ball. He can play multiple spots. I think he's going to kind of be that bench utility piece for them. And you know what? I think he earned it last year. So
yeah,
he pulls the ball in the air. The thing is, what I'm concerned about is it's a sellout for the pull to a degree. And that plays well in Reno and that plays well in Amarillo. It's harder to consistently sell out for the pull at the big league level and do it with success unless you're, a plus hit tool guy. And I don't think he's quite that. But they don't need him to be anything more than a utility piece, and I think that's what he's
yeah.
going to be for them.
He started a game at every position other than catcher in Amarillo. It
No way.
was he started 17 games at first, 52 at second, 9 at third, 2 at short, 14 in center, 1 in left, 1 in right.
He also, I think, has like the Oregon record for like passing yards. If I remember that from the game notes well enough from like the NECBL, if I'm not mistaken, you can fact check me on that.
It wasn't Eric Dungy, former Syracuse quarterback?
I hope it's Oregon. I hope I have the right state.
Yeah, he's from Westland, Oregon.
Okay. I mean, this is a deep cut for me because this is like
Yeah,
four
this is
jobs ago,
so
5 jobs
deep.
ago. But uh, yeah, he is the state's career leader in passing yards with 11,089, touchdown passes with 141, and completions with 698.
All right, Tim, pop off, man.
That's pretty nasty.
Good athlete.
Yeah.
That's nasty. All right,
Gatorade
you know
Player of
what?
the Year in Oregon. So shout out Tim Tawa. Um,
Damn. I'll get a
they didn't give him
jersey.
any respect on 247 though. Two
Oh, two
stars.
star? Two
Yeah, you
star?
gave him a
Yeah.
2 star.
I believe
But
that he was probably playing in like class six or whatever it is, like
yeah,
just the
he's like
smallest one.
Joe Girard.
Yeah, exactly. Like enrollment at his high school is 40, and they're all on the
Hey,
football team.
hey, state record's a state record, baby.
I'm with you. All right, San Francisco. It depends what they want to do starting pitching wise. Like I think Landon Roop makes the team over Carson Whisenhunt. Whisenhunt was a name that jumped to my mind. Former early second round pick and was for some reason docked because of something he took at GNC. Uh, the other one is a reliever in Double A. Have you read anything on Trent Harris before?
Trent Harris.
Trent Harris was in Richmond.
Yeah,
80
yeah, yeah.
innings, low
Crazy
A,
names.
yeah, low A, high A double. A 1.81 ERA. Opponents hit a buck 73 against him. 79 and two-thirds innings, 105 strikeouts. Like he was stuffy clearly. What I read was mid to high 90s fastball and has a breaking ball to complement it, but he was missing enough bats clearly, and they could use some bullpen depth, I think.
Yeah, he barely got to double is the only thing, but what he did in high A is just ridiculous. Opponents at 196, 60 strikeouts in 45 innings. That's probably one of the best options if you're gonna fast track somebody there. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else. Like if they wanted depth or a long man, like Carson Seymour's already on the 40.
Yeah.
He wasn't bad. Honestly, for the PCL, he was pretty good.
But like
Four,
I'd rather have Mason Black be that guy than Carson Seymour, I think.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I guess it would be like an injury related situation. Yeah, Wizenhunt's just not quite there yet. It would be ridiculous to throw Eldridge into that
No.
situation. It seems like it's either a very aggressive push of a Trent Harris, or if you have the opening, Carson Seymour for depth.
Yeah.
There might be a upper minors reliever that was putting up numbers that we're not immediately thinking of, but
Yeah.
the Giants are in kind of an interesting spot there where I don't think there's a ton of clear cut options that
Yeah.
can, I think, get up there and help them in the immediate that they haven't already rushed up to the big leagues, right? Like that's the thing is they generally like to get their guys up there already.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Like even a Trevor McDonald, like already threw, I think, 3 innings up there. In terms of the 40, Carson Ragsdale is another guy that could see some action there already on the 40. But I think his numbers were like massive strikeout numbers in double A. Then those took a bit of a hit in triple A. Ragsdale is a guy that could be a candidate though as well.
Got you. What happened to Wade Meckler and Vaughn Brown? Are they still around? Just hanging
Wade
out?
Meckler is still on the 40, which was
Nice.
crazy. They rushed him to the 40, then self-imposed a 40 crunch by doing that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't know where Von Brown is. Is he still there?
I don't know.
Meckler's
Vaughn
still on the
Brown.
40 though, but yeah, I don't know. Oh, Von Brown's still around. Von Brown is
Okay.
still in the org. He's 26 years old. He was Rule 5 eligible.
And nobody took him in the Rule 5. That's a Ubaldo Jimenez type run. Like Vaughn
That
Brown
was
and
all-time run. The Giants
was
had
that
like
20.
they've had a couple guys that just do that crazy run. I'm looking right now. Yeah, in 2022, he was 24 years old in low A, and he slashed 346. This is in 59 games. 346, 427, 636 with 14 home runs and 23 bags. Then
Yeah,
they sent
there
him
you
up
go.
to then they sent him up to high A. 350, 454, 611 in 43 games, 9 homers and 21 bags. So between the two levels, 103 games, 23 homers, 44 bags. He slashed 346, 437, 623.
Vaughn Brown and Blake Dunn in 2023. Those are my favorite guys. It's like, whoa, all right,
Well,
out of nowhere.
and
Shot at
then
you.
Von Brown is a 26-year-old in 47 games. I think he was banged up last year, but in 47 games in double A, 144, 188, 265 with a
Oh,
49% strikeout rate. Whoa,
damn
something
it.
had to be wrong there.
Damn it. What happened,
I
man?
don't know. I hope he's okay.
That sucks. Last but not least, Colorado. And this is probably the most fun one. Dollander will be given every opportunity to break camp with the Rockies, I do think. And Bill Schmidt has said that. He said that at the winter meetings. Zach Veen is probably in a better position than Yanquiel Fernandez to make
Mhm.
the team. Amador doesn't count because they, for some reason, got him in bigs last year and it didn't make any sense. And then the two other names that jumped to my mind were Carson Palmquist, if there's a space, and Zach Agnos. Like, why is Agnos not in that bullpen already?
Yeah, I mean Agnos is great. Like that's a guy that should be there right away. There's no reason not to rush any of these reliever types that could just go right into that bullpen. Agnos, absolutely. Um, I think Veen has every shot, and I think already being on the 40. having a much better year last year. Unfortunately, dealing with injury again, but not as much, right?
Yeah.
Not as much as relative, but he played
Right.
65 games. But he looked a lot better this past year, especially in Hartford. It would have been one thing for him to like be mediocre in Hartford and then put up numbers in Albuquerque, and it's going to be like, oh, well, do I buy this? He had an 816 OPS in Hartford.
Right.
Um, I, if he's healthy, I'd almost just want to have this guy like with my big league training staff and just under our supervision and take care of him there. Like,
Yeah.
so I think Veen is probably the favorite being on the 40 already.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Dolander is the most impactful player here that if he's dominating, like not only does he have a chance to make it, he has a chance to be like your best pitcher. So that's the thing with Dolander. So I, I think Dolander is the most impressive player out of this group, but like Veen, I think has to show the least. Like if Veen is holding his own against big league pitching, they might just say like, "Come on down, let's see what you can do." Especially with Yankiel already on the 40 and not far behind. Like you need more clarity in with what you've got in Veen. And
Right.
after what Veen just did in Hartford, what are you going to learn about Zach Veen if he has an 875 OPS in Albuquerque?
Nothing. The same stuff you learned about Jordan Beck, which was okay. He's good enough to get a shot in the big leagues, and then like, is he going to stick in the big leagues? I have no idea.
Exactly. So they do need to figure out that situation too, which is part of the reason why they may not push Veen. Like they
Yeah.
do have a bit of a crowded outfield. Move Sam Hilliard. We talked about this.
Yeah.
Like, but even then, they have bodies there, so that could give Dolander the edge. I think both could make the ball club.
Yeah. Palmquist probably not. Palmquist probably goes to Albuquerque.
I think probably returns to Albuquerque, but that is a guy that if they need innings, like you got to feel good about the funkiness and just I think the ability to get outs.
Yeah. And then I don't like I was looking at some other guys and like Luis Peralta was so good after the deadline when he got out there. Like they have a lot of guys that have played, X amount of games, 10 games. They've made, 14 appearances in the big leagues that I'm excited to actually tune into once we get into the 2025 season. The Rockies are going to be a kind of interesting watch. And if Dolander's up there, I'm tuning into every single Dolander start because the lineup is intriguing enough for me to keep me interested in the other half of the inning. And then Dolander takes me there.
Dude, they've had a knack for finding some decent bullpen arms too. Like you mentioned Agnos, they got Halverson up there as well. Peralta's looking
Buzz.
really good. Like Palmquist, as you mentioned, could be another just decent arm to add into the fold. They
Yeah.
were the team that jumped on Dolander when his stock was free falling, so to speak, compared to what we thought it would be. Like
Yeah.
you got to give him credit in that regard. And Sean Sullivan's another guy that I don't think he breaks camp, but he's not far off, man. Like this guy to 197 in double A. If big league hitters look as equally stifled from his crossfire and extension and just the craziness that he has going on there, who knows?
Yeah.
The Rockies may say, you know what? Let's see how that plays up here too.
Or if he's
I
throwing
think
90. If he's throwing 90, then we're
if
good.
he's throwing 90, I'm betting on him to win the Cy Young.
Yeah, there we go.
Like if he can find a couple of ticks again, he's a top 100 prospect. So like I am hoping that's the case. If that happens, if he is throwing harder, he absolutely could break camp.
Got you. That's what we got. That's the National League, American League next week.
Yep, of course. This ended up being split into two. We just got to stop saying that we're going to go rapid fire. Just stop lying. We
Right, that's the thing. Rapid
just
fire,
stop,
and it's like I've got the iPhone stopwatch saying hour 13 on the
stop
National League,
lying.
which is
Like,
great.
but no, I appreciate everybody listening. Hope you all had an awesome new year. Reminder, link is in the episode description if you want to pick up some Just Baseball merch. Great way to support what we're doing here and support the operation and our staff. Also, we will be doing another farm system next week, most likely, but it'll probably be at the very end of the week. We'll keep you posted on that. A lot of fun stuff ahead, though. Maybe another redraft in the cards. That could be
Oh,
something that would be very fun. If you missed that 2020 redraft,
2024 after 10 games.
immediate redraft. Charlie Condon, 25th overall.
Yeah,
Uh,
Tibbs undrafted.
yeah. No, but we will probably do a redraft next week as well. So stay tuned for that. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk prospects with you next week.